3 years ago, my boss laughed in my face and said my ideas would never work in a million years. Today, I'm standing in his office. My office. The nameplate on the door that once read Richard Winters, CEO, now has my name etched in bold. Sometimes revenge isn't just sweet, it's necessary. I wasn't always the man you see today. 5 years ago, I was just another cog in the corporate machine. Badge number 4, 721, Cubicle 38, middle management with barely enough savings to cover next month's rent. Tech had always been my passion, but Pinnacle Solutions was slowly crushing that spark out of me, one soul-destroying meeting at a time. The first time I felt Richard Winters' contempt was during my second week. I'd suggested a small improvement to our client interface during a team meeting. He didn't just dismiss it, he made a spectacle of me. Are you seriously suggesting we change a system that's worked for 15 years because you, the new guy, think you know better? The room fell silent as he leaned across the table, his face inches from mine. Know your place, Miles. I can still feel the spray of his spit hitting my cheek, the humiliation burning through me as colleagues averted their eyes. That became the culture. Ideas died at conception, unless they came from the inner circle. We weren't innovators, we were button pushers, executing someone else's vision. I watched brilliant colleagues become shells of themselves, their creativity beaten down day after day. Marcus, our best developer, once challenged Richard during a product review. The next day, Marcus came in with a black eye from falling down stairs. Nobody questioned why those stairs seemed to exclusively target people who stood up to management. But something inside me refused to break. Every night after my girlfriend Emily fell asleep, I'd sit at our tiny kitchen table under the flickering fluorescent light, developing my concept for a revolutionary cloud security system that used biomimicry, technology that mirrors patterns found in nature. While competitors built digital walls, I envisioned a security ecosystem that adapted like an immune system, learning and evolving against threats in real time. It wasn't just innovative, it could transform how companies protected their data forever. I poured everything into this idea. Weekends, holidays, our anniversary dinner. Emily still hasn't fully forgiven me for that one. 3 months of sleep-deprived obsession produced a working prototype that outperformed anything on the market. The metrics were undeniable. This wasn't just an incremental improvement, it was a paradigm shift. Foolishly, I still believed in the company's mission statement about valuing innovation from within. When Richard announced the annual Innovation Challenge with a promised development budget, I thought fate had finally aligned. Emily saw my excitement that morning and squeezed my hand. "They'll see your brilliance today," she whispered, straightening my tie. Her faith in me was unshakable, even when mine wavered. Walking into Pinnacle headquarters that morning, clutching my presentation materials, I actually believed my life was about to change. The weight of sleepless nights and sacrificed weekends felt worth it. I trusted the system. I trusted Richard. That trust was about to become the most expensive mistake of my career, and the catalyst that would eventually put me in the position to destroy everything Richard had built. Little did I know, you don't rise to the top at companies like Pinnacle through innovation. You get there by stealing it. Presentation day. The boardroom smelled of expensive cologne and corporate ambition. I stood before the executive team, heart hammering against my ribs as I walked them through my adaptive security system. For 18 minutes, they were captivated. Questions came rapid fire. Even the CFO, notorious for shooting down R&D proposals, leaned forward with interest. This was it, my moment of vindication. Then Richard spoke. "Interesting academic exercise, Miles." His voice carried that familiar condescending tone that made my stomach tighten. "But this is business, not a college thesis project. He stood up, towering over the table. Biomimicry in cybersecurity? It's been tried. It's failed. We need practical solutions, not science fiction fantasies. One by one, I watched the executive team's interest evaporate. Richard continued dismantling my presentation point by point, twisting my words, misrepresenting the technology. When I tried to correct him, he cut me off. I think we all understand the limitations here better than you do, Miles. The dismissive glances exchanged around the table told me everything. I was the office joke. As everyone filed out, Richard clasped my shoulder with crushing pressure. "Know your strengths," he whispered. "Stick to maintaining what we've built. Leave the innovation to people who understand the market." His fingers dug into my collarbone, pain radiating down my arm. Not enough to leave a mark, but enough to send a message. 2 weeks later, I discovered my access to the development server had been revoked. Marcus found me staring at my computer in disbelief. "They're calling it a security protocol update," he muttered, eyes darting around for eavesdroppers. "But you should see what's happening in the executive lab." Richards assembled a special team. They're working on something big, something that sounds eerily familiar. That night, I broke company policy and used Marcus's credentials to access the executive project files. There it was, Project Adaptive Shield. My blood ran cold as I scrolled through page after page of my own work, slightly reworded but fundamentally identical. Even my original diagrams were there, just redrawn with different colors. The project lead? Richard Winters. I confronted him the next morning in the parking garage, my hands shaking with rage. "You stole my work," my voice echoed between concrete pillars. Richard's face remained impassive as he casually adjusted his cufflinks. "Intellectual property created on company time belongs to the company, Miles. Perhaps review your employment contract." Something snapped inside me. 20 years of being pushed around, of playing by rules that others ignored. I lunged forward, grabbing his expensive lapel. It wasn't just the idea, it was me, my nights, my weekends. Security cameras be damned, I needed him to acknowledge what he'd done. His response was swift. A sharp uppercut to my solar plexus that left me gasping on the oil-stained concrete. As I struggled for breath, he straightened his jacket. "Consider this your exit interview," he said coolly. "HR will process your termination for workplace violence. Your keycard is already deactivated." 2 security guards appeared as if on cue. I was escorted out like a criminal, personal items dumped in a cardboard box. Emily found me sitting in our driveway hours later, still clutching that pathetic box, rain-soaked and broken. "They took everything," I whispered as she held me. "My project, my reputation." The severance agreement required my silence in exchange for 8 weeks' pay. Richard had calculated perfectly. Just enough to keep me from immediate financial ruin, not enough to hire a lawyer worth anything. 3 months later, Pinnacle announced their revolutionary new security system to industry acclaim. Richard was hailed as a visionary. I watched the launch event live stream from our apartment, now crowded with unpaid bills and rejection letters. Each time Richard smiled for the cameras, my fingers tightened around my coffee mug until it finally shattered, slicing my palm open. As blood dripped onto our secondhand carpet, something hardened inside me. This wasn't over. Depression swallowed me whole. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Emily tried everything, but I was unreachable, lost in a fog of failure and betrayal. On our anniversary, she placed a gift box in front of me. Inside was my old notebook, filled with the original sketches for my security system. "This was never about the job," she said, tears flowing. "This was about your vision. They didn't steal your genius, Miles. They just borrowed one idea." That night, I received a message from Marcus. "Coffee tomorrow. Urgent." We met at a dingy cafe across town. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands jittery as they navigated his laptop. "They're butchering your system," he whispered, "missing the fundamental architecture. Richard doesn't understand the core principles. He only stole the surface layer." He turned the screen toward me. "These are the error reports from the first 3 client implementations. Catastrophic failures across the board. The system was collapsing because they'd implemented it wrong." My heart raced as Marcus continued. "Richard's cutting corners, pushing for quick profits over sustainability. The adaptation algorithms are simplified to the point of uselessness." He slid a flash drive across the table. "Complete documentation of their implementation. And this?" He pulled out a business card. "Samantha Reeves, venture capitalist. Specializes in tech startups focused on cybersecurity. She was at your presentation. She saw what Richard did. She wants to meet." Samantha wasn't what I expected. No pretension, just ruthless intelligence and burning curiosity. "I'm not interested in charity cases," she stated flatly in her downtown office. "But I recognize stolen brilliance when I see it." She jabbed her finger into my chest. "Are you going to sit there feeling sorry for yourself? Or are you ready to build something that will make Pinnacle look like a high school computer club?" That confrontation was exactly what I needed. Someone who believed in me, but wouldn't tolerate self-pity. I slammed my fist on her desk, papers flying. "I'm not just going to build something better," I growled. "I'm going to render their entire approach obsolete." For the first time in months, fire returned to my eyes. Samantha's slow smile told me she'd gotten exactly what she wanted. The next 18 months were brutal. Emily and I converted our apartment into a makeshift office. I recruited 3 brilliant developers who'd been similarly discarded by corporate giants. We worked 20-hour days fueled by convenience store coffee and determination. When our first test system outperformed market standards by 340%, Samantha brought in major investors. We named the company Phoenix Secure, risen from the ashes of my professional destruction. Our launch coincided with reports of major security breaches at several Pinnacle clients. Their implementation was failing exactly as Marcus had predicted. The industry noticed. Within weeks, our phone wouldn't stop ringing. One night, as we celebrated our first major enterprise contract, I received a text from an unknown number. "Richard knows it's you. Watch your back." 3 days later, someone broke into our offices. Nothing was stolen, but our prototype server was physically damaged and development files corrupted. The message was clear. Richard was scared, and scared men are dangerous. I confronted the threat head-on, calling a press conference the very next day. Standing before technology journalists from across the country, I publicly challenged Pinnacle's security claims and offered free security audits to their clients. "The market deserves genuine innovation, not rushed imitations," I declared, staring directly into the cameras, knowing Richard would be watching. My phone nearly exploded with messages afterward. Emily grabbed my arm as we left the venue. "You just declared war on a billion-dollar company," she whispered. I squeezed her hand and smiled. Number I just offered salvation to their clients. The exodus began slowly. First, it was smaller Pinnacle clients testing our system alongside theirs. Then mid-sized companies making complete switches. Our reputation grew with each successful implementation, while Pinnacle scrambled to patch their fundamentally flawed architecture. Richard launched a smear campaign claiming we'd stolen their intellectual property. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the industry, especially after Marcus and 2 other former Pinnacle employees went public with their testimonies. 18 months later, Phoenix Secure was valued at $400 million. We'd captured 40% of the enterprise security market. Pinnacle's stock was in freefall, their security division hemorrhaging clients and talent. I followed their decline with calculated attention, watching quarterly reports sink lower each time. This wasn't just business anymore. This was personal vindication. The confrontation I'd dreamed about for years finally happened at an industry conference in Chicago. I spotted Richard at the bar, nursing a whiskey, his once immaculate suit now slightly rumpled. The mighty had fallen indeed. I slid onto the stool beside him. "Hello, Richard." His head snapped up, eyes narrowing with recognition and hatred. "Come to gloat?" he slurred, alcohol evident on his breath. "Enjoy it while you can. We're developing a new system that will make yours obsolete." Even now, the lies came easily to him. I smiled, placing a folder between us. "Actually, I came with an offer. Phoenix Secure is prepared to acquire Pinnacle's security division." I pushed the folder toward him. "Board meetings tomorrow. I thought you might appreciate the courtesy of hearing it from me first." He lunged at me, grabbing my collar, spit flying as he hissed, "You think I'd sell to you? After everything?" Several onlookers gasped as he shoved me backward. I caught myself, straightening my jacket with deliberate calmness that I knew would infuriate him further. "The board doesn't share your sentiments," I replied evenly. "They've already expressed interest. Your reputation, your power, it's all contingent on results, Richard. And your results have been disappointing." I leaned closer. "They're looking for a scapegoat. Guess who's at the top of their list?" His punch was telegraphed by his shifting stance. I sidestepped it easily, watching him stumble forward as security personnel converged. As they escorted him out, our eyes met one last time. I saw something I'd never seen in Richard Winters before: fear. 3 weeks later, I stood in the Pinnacle Executive Boardroom, the same room where my ideas had been mocked years before. The acquisition was complete. Phoenix had absorbed Pinnacle's security division at a fraction of its former worth. Employees gathered anxiously as I took the podium for my first address as their new CEO. "Some of you know my history with this company," I began, scanning faces that ranged from curious to hostile. "You're wondering if I'm here for revenge." I paused, letting the tension build. The answer is no. Revenge was never the point. Innovation was. Excellence was. Creating something meaningful was. I spotted Marcus in the crowd, now my chief technology officer, nodding slightly. "This acquisition isn't about the past, it's about the future we'll build together. Those who value real innovation will thrive here. Those who don't—" I smiled. "Well, there's a lesson to be learned from your former leadership." Later that afternoon, I stood in Richard's former office, my new office, staring out at the city skyline. The door opened, and Emily walked in, placing a familiar notebook on the desk. "Your original sketches," she said. "I thought they belonged here." I pulled her close, feeling the weight of our journey in that embrace. "You know what the greatest revenge is?" I whispered against her hair. "It's not owning his company. It's creating the company he could never build. One where innovation is celebrated, not stolen. Where people thrive, not just survive." As the sun set over the city, I thought about the path that led here. The humiliation, the betrayal, the grueling fight back. Success isn't guaranteed to the most deserving. Sometimes you have to claw your way through hell to create your own justice. Sometimes the world needs to see that the underdogs can become the leaders, that brilliance can't be contained, and that in the end, authentic vision always outshines stolen ideas. Richard Winters mocked my ideas and stole my work, but in doing so, he unleashed something far more powerful than any security system. He unleashed my refusal to be defined by someone else's limitations. Now I own his company, but more importantly, I own my future. And that, more than any corporate acquisition, is the true victory.